Hey, it's Jeff. Bucket list on a budget. So I'm gonna kind of power through this. I've filmed this a few times and it's been screwed up, the video or the audio. Audio is gonna be rough this time because there's gonna be some street noise. I'm at a cafe in Tirana, Albania. It's probably midnight. They're closed. I'm sitting on the street side. I just didn't want to sit in my apartment and film this again. So bucket list on a budget real quick. It is essentially trading rent for Airbnbs and hotels. That's kind of it in a nutshell. You know, I discovered I could afford to travel if I didn't have to pay rent. But that didn't really work out so well, right? Because then you get evicted and then all your stuff's on the corner. You got nowhere to go back to, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, I was watching a video the other day and they spent the first 5 minutes talking about their dog. Another video spent like good 10 minutes, 5 minutes talking about their friends and blah, blah, blah. Nothing about the content of the video. So if you're wondering what bucket list on a budget is, that's it right there. That's the quick synopsis. I'm going to break it down a little more. And then I'll probably do another video about the origins of it because I think that's kind of germane to the subject. But bucket list on a budget, basically, you know, why bucket list? The budget thing is pretty self-explanatory. And, you know, the bucket list things for me started with the original plan. This all started back in 2018. It's 2022 right now. It's November 2022. So 2018, I started traveling. Hadn't really been doing much before that, basically sitting in a chair. 2019, so 2018 in November I went to the Philippines for the first trip. 2019, almost the same dates at the trip, a year later. You know, I'd been to the Philippines a few times after that, and I had decided that, you know, I wanted to explore other options to travel more permanently, because, you know, I was sitting there making my plan for my trip, and I'll probably touch on like how to plan a vacation in my head at some point in time. But, you know, I'm going over this plan and I was getting really frustrated because like I could afford hotels and this and this and that, but the real drawback was rent. You know, and so it's like, do I go for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, you know? And it was just this, because it wasn't very expensive once I got there. The real expensive part was getting there and getting back, obviously. That's an important part. Don't forget to get back. Don't forget to save an emergency fund to get back. That's another story. So what I started putting together in my head is, you know, if I could afford to do weekend trips in California where I lived, then I could afford to travel. So instead of doing like one weekend trip a month, I would do one big trip every quarter, or, you know, 3 times a year. And at the time, like, I could find round trip tickets from San Francisco to the Philippines between $600 and $800. I found some as cheap as $400. To put that into perspective, that's, you know, couple nights in a hotel in California, 3 nights, 4 nights in a hotel in California. So, you know, if I don't do a weekend trip a month and I save that money, then, you know, my money goes much farther in the Philippines. At the same time, I also changed my budgeting. I changed the way I spend money dramatically to facilitate my travel, obviously, because I wanted to travel more. So that morphed, and about 2019 I really came to the idea that, you know, I just want to get out of California and get closer to places I want to spend more time, because California was just a toxic place. Like, you go for a walk and there's trash everywhere. You're dealing with these crazy crackheads and chuckleheads everywhere, and, you know, it just, the environment I was living in, the environment I could afford to live in on my budget in California, was not fun. And it wasn't going to get better anytime soon. That was a big key deciding factor, is it wasn't going to get better anytime soon. You know, no matter how much trash I picked up, there was always going to be more tomorrow. And there was. Been there, done that many times. Again, you'll hear me say this a lot. That's another story. So 2019 November or October 2019 October November, I was in the Philippines. I hurt my knee, and that kind of sunk all my plans. Like, first day on the water, first day on the boat, screwed up my knee really bad. And so I still made another trip that February 2020. I limped. You know, by then I had figured out how to walk. Still couldn't get in to see a doctor. You know, but I figured out how to walk, and I had a splint. So I went, right? Pretty knuckleheaded sometimes, and you know, my 2020 February trip was all about like seeing if it would really work if I could live in the Philippines and bounce to some place like Bali for as cheap as it looked online. So when I was in the Philippines, I can't remember the exact figures, but I want to say I went to Bali and back for, well, I was there 4 nights, I remember that. And I want to say the whole trip cost me like $400, $500. So my idea is to live in the Philippines, and instead of doing like California, instead of doing weekend trips around California or maybe out to Vegas, do weekend trips to Bali, to India, to Vietnam, to Japan. And you know, at the time you could fly round trip pretty much anywhere. You know, you had to pick and choose your airports and times, but you know, I'm pretty open to flexibility. So you could travel pretty much anywhere round trip for about $200, and then it was just money on the ground that you needed, whether it was rent or hotels or Airbnb, and then food and activities, right? So Philippines was a really great place to be as an American because they have a really good visa program. If you're coming in and out every few months, it's really easy. If you're going to stay there long term, it gets a little more complicated, but it's still really easy. And it's a really friendly environment for Americans. There's an actual VA there. There's you know, a lot of perks to being an American in the Philippines that other countries don't get. And they speak English, and the people are amazingly friendly. So it seemed like the ideal place to base camp, and then, you know, start hitting my bucket list. You know, I want to go sit in the hot tub in northern Japan with the monkeys. You know, I want to go to temples in India, and I can't think of the name of that place right now. It was in the Lara Croft movies. It's over there between India and Thailand. Bangladesh. You know, there's some crazy temples in Bangladesh I want to go check out. Thailand, of course. You know, there's so much to see in Thailand. And Vietnam, you know, the Kras, I think they're called, the big rocks that jut out of the water in the bay. I want to go check that shit out, right? So all these things I wanted to do, and I never would have dreamed I could have done it from California, because it gets really cost prohibitive bouncing back and forth. But if you're only paying $200 in airfare to most of these places, if not all of them, and you start thinking about it, $200, that's gas. You know, we're talking 2018, 2019. You know, that's pretty much gas for a weekend if you're driving around California. So, obviously, I'm in the Philippines 2020. I go to Bali, come back, and COVID hits. And bam. And my knee got a little bit worse. Never got seen by a doctor. So I didn't get seen by a doctor until November of 2020. I think it was November 2020. I can't remember. Anyway, so I went to physical therapy for a long time. Like, I did 2 full sessions of physical therapy. I got to where I could kind of walk. I mean, it was to the point where, you know, I was having a hard time just making a trip to Costco. And I, you know, I muscled through it as hard as I could, but, you know, I'd go for a long walk or a longer walk, and, you know, my knee would hurt so bad I didn't want to get out of bed the next day. That happened a lot. So things opened up and I got back on my plan. I could walk again, and California kept getting worse and I had to get out of there. So I was getting out of there one way or the other. It didn't matter. I was leaving. Then I got sick again, had some health problems, started getting better a little bit, and somebody offered me a reduced rent house sitting gig in the Azores for 2 months, and I jumped on it. So when I left California, it was kind of a shit show because I was having a hard time getting anything done. And I ended up in the Azores, and I started driving forward with my plan. And I was very excited, very happy. The Azores was great. I can't tell you how healthy that was for me. And that's been the biggest perk of this, bucket list on a budget lifestyle is, it's extremely healthy for me. I'm not sitting around. I'm not like blah, blah, blah. So I'm running around the Azores, walking a lot more than I had in the last year. Took a little side trip from the Azores to test that out. Went to Italy, Albania, and then came back to the Azores. And that was excellent. And kind of proved my theory again. And so then I, the lease ran out, the owner came back to their house, and I bounced over here to Tirana, Albania. I've been here, I got here, when did I get here? I was in June, July in Azores, so I got here August, September, October. This is November. I'll be leaving in December. And part of that's about the visa situation. Part of that's just, I walked out and found this place. Albania, if I were looking at doing the whole base camp and bounce out for weekends, Tirana, Albania is probably the best place I've found, because a lot of things, the cost of living as an American, you can live here a year without a visa, or you get a tourist visa on arrival. They didn't even stamp my passport. I've been through customs a number of times here. They've never even stamped my passport. They just check you in to their computer system and rush you through. They're super fast in their customs. They're about getting the job done and going home. So it's not a lot of this screw with you. So if I were going to base camp like I'd planned to in the Philippines, in Europe, so far this would be my first choice. The cost of living in the east to get out of here is just amazing. The airport is so friendly. Going to the Philippines, I used to fly into Clark because flying into Manila just wasted a whole day. And I was bouncing from island to island one time, and I came back to Clark, Angeles City, and so I landed at the airport, and I forgot the numbers now. Maybe they'll come to me another time, but I look at my watch, and I want to say it was 14 or 16 minutes. I'm positive it was significantly under 20, because I looked at my watch when the door opened on the airplane, right? One of those little airplanes, couple of small props on the sides. And so I watched the door open. I go walk into the airport. I'm one of the first people off the airplane. And then I pass everybody else, walking off the tarmac. I walk into the airport, I pick up my bag, right as it's coming out on the, my checked bag, it's coming out on the conveyor belt. I just pick it up and walk right out the door. I didn't even stop. I walk out the door, the car I'd booked is sitting right there. He stops at an ATM on the way to the hotel. I get to the hotel, the guy grabs my bags out of the car. I go to the front desk, they check me in, and I'm literally in the shower, in under 20 minutes. And that's how, Angeles Airport is just so nice. They're just so quick and efficient there, and there's no monkeying around, and there's no traffic problems usually. It's just so easy. So if you're gonna bounce around the Philippines and base camp somewhere in the Philippines, Angeles is a really good place, just because of that. And Tirana is the same way. It's not quite as fast, but it's nearly as fast. You get to Tirana Airport, and there's not a lot of headache there. It's just so easy in and out. I've flown in and out only a few times so far, but anyway, so if I were going to base camp in Europe, You know, this is a pretty central location. You're 30 minutes from, or 45 minutes from Italy. You know, you could fly over there for an afternoon probably. I haven't checked the schedules. You know, you're so close to Greece, you know, Istanbul, Germany, you know, France, Spain. I mean, it's really a good central location. If you want to come over here and hit all those big spots, right? If you want to come over here and hit things like Rome and Greece and, you know, Athens and Crete, Istanbul, Bucharest, Budapest, you know, it's all, and then wintertime the flights slow down. Obviously they don't get as many flights, so the flight schedules slow down, but in summertime they pick back up. And you know, there's 2 cheap airlines here, and sometimes the airfare is just insanely cheap. Like I was looking at one day going to Italy, and it was going to cost me more to take, or about the same as to take a taxi to the airport as it would to fly from here to Italy. And so it's just, you know, great place to be. So bucket list on a budget. There's 2 ways to do this now. I've kind of modified my approach. Since I'm not paying rent, right? I can either, my original plan was to move every 3 months and just kind of, you know, my plan was to move and then in the middle month, you know, spend my money and go on a side trip, and then, you know, save for another month, and then after the 3rd month move, and keep bouncing around. Part of that was the Schengen treaty, 90 days in, 90 days out deal of Europe. And I did a little quick shot about the travel update about Poland. It's a little hack on that 90 days. And so, you know, you can do the bucket list on a budget a couple different ways now. You know, the whole thing is, you know, you're not paying rent. So you have to stay flexible, you have to stay nimble, you have to stay confident, and you have to keep a padding in your account to deal with problems. So you can either base camp someplace like Albania or Poland or Romania and then do weekends out of there. And if you're going to go to more expensive places, that's a good option, right? Or you can bounce around to some of these cheaper places and just explore them. Like, I was stunned. Albania is just an amazing place. And, you know, you could bounce around here, Airbnb, in, you know, a dozen different cities. You know, every month or 2, just move to a new city. And I love just, you know, I didn't expect this, but I love just walking around, meeting people, talking to people. You know, the city is so interesting to me. It's just a pleasure. And I had the same experience in Poland, the same experience in Portugal. You know, I met some of you know, it's weird. I was in Portugal just a couple dozen days, Portugal mainland. I met some of the most amazing people. It's like, you know, they left a mark on me. So that's bucket list on a budget, kind of overview and the how and the why, you know, and just to kind of put it into perspective, you know, I had a layover in Italy and I took the ferry over, and then I think the ferry got in at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was flying out at 9 o'clock at night, right? 2100. And so I had all day, and like, I wasn't sure what to do. I was in a city called Bari, so I jumped the train. I go south to this little cove. I'll drop a picture here. You know, and I'm kind of like, I wanted to go down and sit on the beach, you know, was my plan after seeing pictures, but I get there and it's just crowded, just insanely crowded. So I'm like kind of fussing around. I get some food, and, you know, I ordered, this is funny, I ordered a Red Bull vodka, and the guy takes a wine glass, like a big wine glass, and fills the damn thing with vodka, like empties the whole bottle. And he only charged me like €3. I don't know what he was thinking, but you know, whatever. So next thing you know, I'm like hammered, and I filled up on cheese and meats, and you know, it was just a great little place. And so, you know, I'm jumping in the water, and I'm due to fly in a few hours. So I'm swimming around this little, you know, micro cove, maybe 10 meters across, 5 meters, 10 meters maybe. And I find this little cave, and it goes way back under the rocks. And I'm swimming in there. I met some locals in there. We were chatting for a second, and it was just the like craziest thing. And then I swim back out. I grab my little pack. I run up the hill, get on a little. It's not a trike, but basically it was a golf cart. This gal, I thought she was like ferrying people around. And so I asked her how much to take me to the bus station because it was uphill and my knee was hurting. I was tired. And so she gave me a price. I don't remember what it was. And she took me up there. What ends up, she just worked for a hotel and was just, dropping people off with a hotel. Made a little side cash. It's the funniest thing. But she had this little golf cart thing. Took me up to the bus. Some locals helped me, buy my bus ticket or train ticket. Took the train right to the airport, jumped on the plane, and I was off to Porto, Portugal. But it was just the funniest thing, right? Just like, oh, I got some little bit of time to kill. Let me, take a little side trip here on this layover and, go explore Italy. I had a great time, So all those things open up, right? But if you had asked me or asked anybody that knew me 5 years ago, if they ever would have expected me to end up in Italy, swimming in the whatever sea that is, the Aegean Sea or whatever, we all would have laughed at you. No way, no how. I wasn't managing my money, I wasn't doing this, I wasn't doing that, and the flight from America to Italy is just insane. So to go there on a vacation, you're talking a year's savings just to make it there and back on a vacation. Where if I'm already over here, like right now, I could probably go to the airport and be on a flight tomorrow morning to Italy for $50 at the most. More than likely, 40 or 30. And if I plan it right, I can definitely hit the 30 benchmark. And then I've learned where to stay over there and where not to, and what cities are really crazy expensive and what cities aren't, and how to use the trains. It's all really simple, and that's just on a couple quick pass-through trips. A couple days here, a couple days there. So, just the idea that I would end up in Italy going for a swim at this super famous beach, it just boggles my mind. And the world is out there. The world is easily accessible, even on a budget. And I think that's the big takeaway. If even on a small budget, you can go do these crazy things. It's just a matter of figuring out what you want to do. And it may not be travel. You may never want to see Italy. You may never want to see Rome. You may never want to go to Poland, and that's great. You may never want to go to Japan. That's great. But the whole lesson for me is, you can do whatever the effing you want. It just takes you a little change of mindset, a little discipline, and having that goal. That gets me on to another subject, today, tomorrow, never. I'll get into that later, but just remember, today, tomorrow, and never. It's another thing that's really helped propel me forward in life in the last 5-10 years. So, bucket list on a budget. Make your list, make your plans, and I'll break this all down in more detail in another video. But it's a simple concept, right? Is take everything you have and get rid of it. Get a couple backpacks or duffel bags or whatever and hit the road. And like I was saying, you can either hit the road on the Rapid Move program or the Base Camp and Bounce programs, right? So you can move every 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever, and just keep rolling around, or you can set up a base camp and launch out little expeditions from there. And it's, either way works well. I'm kind of doing a hybrid of it right now. And actually, just thinking I'm looking at the holidays and I kind of want to bounce around a lot. And I'm looking at my bags going, boy, I'd really like to be down to one backpack right now. But, you know, if I'm at a base camp somewhere, the other bags I have are really set up to base camp. So, hard decisions to make, but in the end, I'm in Albania. And I won't be here long, so stay tuned.